Hello, Guardians. Today is November 18th, 2022. My name's Danfinity, and welcome to Destiny Digest. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope your week has been fantastic. We have some piping hot news coming down the pike, as well as a conversation with show producer Eseipha. Before we get started, I do want to say that next week you will receive a new episode in your podcast feeds a few days early. With Thanksgiving around the corner in America, we will be taking Friday off from posting, but on Wednesday, we will be hosting three-time world's first raid champion, Salta Greppo, to speak here on the show. I'm literally going to be recording the episode with Salt and Seth, editing it and getting it out the door as soon as possible for your holiday travels. I currently have a tweet up for community questions, so be sure to check out the show notes for a link if you'd like to participate. If you happen to listen on Spotify, this is a neat little feature. You can ask a question in the prompt for this week's episode, and I'll be sure to fit it in for next week. Also, if you'd like to support the show, be sure to hop on over to coffee.com/Danfinity. That's ko-fi.com/Danfinity. And for as little as $3 a month, you can get bonus material, such as an extra 20 minutes of today's conversation with Seth. I'm also working on getting weekly personal podcasts out there called Double Down. So if you'd like a peek behind the curtain, you can support there. Now, on to the news. Cheat maker Aim Junkies had their counterclaim against Bungie tossed out of their suit earlier this week. Aim Junkies alleged that Bungie had hacked their computers to reverse engineer their hacks in order to file suit. However, with not enough suitable evidence to support Aim Junkies' claims, the judge tossed them. Aim Junkies could still amend their claims with a deadline of later this month, according to torrentfreak.com. This week at Bungie, Dylan breaks down a huge list of changes coming to the Crucible in Season 19 with a handy TLDR baked in. Thank you, Dylan, so much for making my job a little bit easier this week. To quote from the TWAB, Bungie defines their goals for the Crucible ecosystem. They're updating their Crucible playlist structure to streamline the Crucible offerings and help focus Crucible population by collapsing Control and Clash into a single quick play playlist, bringing some of the lesser played game modes into weekly rotators, namely Rumble, which I feel that one's kind of confusing. Bungie is also introducing a new Crucible seal and bringing Ingram focusing to Lord Shaxx to give players more ways to engage with the Crucible rewards. In Lightfall, they will be expanding the Ingram focusing to include older weapons and armor sets across Crucible, Iron Banner, Trials, and more. In Season 19, Iron Banner will be getting a new mode called Fortress and a Legacy armor set that veteran Guardians should recognize. They're also updating matchmaking techniques between skill, connection, and team sizes to provide better experiences in the Crucible. This will start with quick play and roll out to more playlists over time, namely after the holiday break. They will also be tuning the quitter suspension parameters for quick play. Bungie is also testing new matchmaking techniques and trials to hopefully provide better experiences to solo and duo fire teams without the need for freelance mode. This will also help Bungie in reassessing the flawless pool for Season 20 and beyond. Bungie is bringing more maps to the Crucible over the next year. 2 maps will be returning from earlier years in Destiny 2, and a brand new map is being added during the year of Lightfall. They will also be introducing competitive divisions to act as their quote-unquote ranked Crucible space for players seeking to test their skill. Not only that, they are also bringing back the Rose Hand Cannon, which was a 140, but it seems like it'll act like a 150. That will be a weekly reward for participating in that playlist. For a full deep dive into the changes expected, follow the links in the show notes. With this TWAB, Bungie also celebrates Trans Awareness Week by offering up the Be True emblem for the second time since its creation. The next community event will arrive next week with Guardians going around the galaxy to collect Captain's Coins to donate to the Elixni Quarter for upgrades there. A word of warning for this event, there are a bunch of data mine spoilers online, including the final cutscene, so be advised if you want it to remain a surprise for you. Next Tuesday marks changes for the Scallywag title, that's this season's title, making it easier to earn for players, so if you're on the hunt for ruffians, maybe hold off a little bit. That's all for the news of this week so far. Now, onto a conversation with producer Eseipha. Hey, Seth.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome back to the show, friend. Well, I guess
Usually in the background.
Yeah, every week, every time.
Not really a welcome back.
To the
It's more of
show.
the
It's like,
yeah.
hey,
It's like,
thanks for being a partner in crime.
it's the type of shit that I do.
Yeah. So, we're kind of free balling right now. But so why don't you tell the folks at home where they can find you on the internet and what you do around here on this show?
I'm mainly on Twitter. That's the best way to kind of quote unquote find me. I also will be lurking on a bunch of streams, but my big one is just being on Twitter and doom scrolling my life away.
Yeah.
What do I do here? What do I do, Dan?
What do you do here?
I give you ideas of people to invite. I try to help you whenever I can.
Yes.
I'm a fly on the wall. I message you during like recordings to make you ask people questions, and then you fully ignore me.
Them. Yeah.
Yep. That's another thing.
Look, that's not on purpose.
That's the full truth. That's the worst part. Is that is the full truth.
That's not on purpose. That's just me in the midst. I'm in the zone when like recording stuff. I'm in the zone, and I like
often it's like very pertinent questions or very pertinent information. So I'm like, Dan, this is important, and then you just
then I get like 10 minutes later.
Yeah, 100%. Like, damn.
You want to know what happens?
What?
You want to know what happens? So
yeah, sure, go for it.
I get the message,
and
then it's 10 minutes after we've missed that leg of the conversation, and I'm like, full steam ahead.
Oh my god, you're the worst.
I you know what? I happen to be the worst.
Oh my god. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's just funny, and I'm like, Dan, please.
Yeah, I know. And it's the whole thing, like in streamer culture, where it's like you can't read all of chat.
This is one chat though.
I know. Yeah, that's very. I'm sorry. Maybe if it scrolled up. Maybe I'll just
right.
Maybe I'll keep your.
Insane. He's trying to find all of the excuses right now, and none of them are standing up.
No, none of them are great. I'll just keep your tab open next time and be like, oh, Seth asked a question. But
and just watch. He's still gonna ignore it.
Well, yeah.
Funny.
So this one's a little bit different than the other conversations that we've had on the show, because it's not really so much like about like the state of a core playlist, or
we can talk about that if you want.
I mean, we can.
I have a lot to say. No, I'm kidding. I do have a lot to say, but
we've had these conversations
multiple times, but we never recorded them.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like like we could talk about that. We can also talk about like, I mean, Telesto last week. What is a special event in Destiny 2? And like the conversation came up last week where they did an AMA on Reddit and everybody went apeshit.
I didn't even see that AMA. Holy crap, I've missed something.
Wait, hold on. Did you miss that whole thing?
I missed that whole thing. I swear to God. I saw the Telesto thing, and then here's a really cool theory that I saw on Twitter, and I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense. And the theory goes, and probably a lot of people saw that. Theory goes, the Telesto thing was kind of a test for Bungie to see how much they can change something in the game as quickly as possible. Like, what's the time that it takes for them to apply an update or a change within the game?
Yeah.
Without really having to make like a full like hot patch or hot fix patch thing or whatever. So that kind of make sense, because it was very like, was it really a special event? It was a cool little thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a special event, at least not in my.
It was memey, like, yeah, I mean, more than anything. Let's see here. I'm scrolling through because so I'm gonna open up a couple of tweets here,
sure,
for my own benefit.
Sure.
So, like, what in the past we've received like special events, special like little key mark things that like tell us, oh, okay, like there's a whisper out in the wilderness, like things along those lines that usually bring the community together around an event or an activity that's kind of secret and hid. And a lot of people, well, especially with this Telesto thing, with it acting weird, took that as like a it was a secret message or something, right? And it got expectations up because in the past we've known how good Destiny is when there's secret.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that was part of the issue, is that we've had these really cool events in the past, and we're gonna like say Whisper, 0 Hour. Then you had like the Corridors of Time, you had Niobe Labs, you had all these things, and some people still have PTSD over like Corridors of Time or Niobe Labs, but they were really nice things, and you had to discover them, and there were puzzles, and it was like community-wide effort and event. Let's call that. And you also had, to a certain extent, I don't know if you remember this, but it had like, I don't remember the name of it, but it was like the Moss thing where you had to do like X amount of escalation protocol, and you had to do like X amount of things on Moss. It was like a really long time ago. Well, not that long. I think it was Arrivals. And while this wasn't as much of an concerted effort by the community, it was still an effort by the community to do something. Like you had to hit those milestones. And then after Arrivals, like there was kind of nothing like that. There hasn't really been any community thing, or any secret mission. And like Presage was kind of that, but kind of not.
Yeah,
like to me, it did not feel the same.
That gets brought up a lot in the conversation, but that definitely feels like it's a cousin to those Whisper.
It's a distant cousin.
Yeah, well, because it also ended up tying into that season's story, right? Like,
yeah, that's true, because Whisper and 0 Hour, let's go with the just the story mission or the quest mission, whatever you call those. They were kind of their own entities, right?
Yeah,
they still
a bottle episode.
Exactly, like the 0 Hour still had Mithrax, right? He was part of that, and we had heard of Mithrax before. We had encountered him and either killed him or left him alive, and that had some type of effect throughout the game or something. Like, it's been a while. I don't remember the whole details of that, but he was a returning character in something new, but that something new didn't have something specific to do with that season, or even I think that DLC. It was its own thing. Like you said, it's a standalone episode. And same thing for Whisper. Whisper was its standalone thing, but it had a little callback to Vogue, which back then was not in the game. So there were these cool little things that you could do and you could repeatedly do, and in my opinion, at least for me, were fun to repeat and to do and to help people achieve. The only one that kind of felt similar to that for me, kind of, and I do say kind of, was the Harbinger mission, because I have friends that do like oob and go around in when they're out of bounds. And the whole there was a whole area that was found randomly by somebody because they ooped and are like, wait, something's weird. And they found it, and I had known way beforehand that this was an area that existed. We didn't talk about it because we try to keep those things secrets as much as possible. But for me, it seemed interesting. I'm like, oh, this is a new area. This is something new. What's going to happen? And the feel of it felt a little bit more like those two other missions. But Presage to me felt like a completely different creature. Not a bad one. It was just completely different. One that I personally didn't really like, but that's my own personal opinion. Right? It wasn't bad. It just wasn't my style of thing.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was fun. When it came around, it was fun running people through that. But then again, it had that kind of secret mission timer thing to it that the Whisper mission and it had that kind of element to those story missions that I enjoyed.
Yeah, exactly. It just didn't feel the same to me.
Mm.
It was still okay. Like, it was fun and everything, but
Yeah. But
I don't know. It was, for me, it was missing something, but it's just me.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we had these things back in the day, these kind of secret things, and these like kind of like find something. Like, hey, here's a clue, go find what it is.
Yeah.
And it feels like the game has kind of lost that, because this is something that you hear a lot from a lot of content creators, a lot of players, a lot of like those, hardcore players, maybe less from the quote unquote casuals. I don't really like using that word, but the people that play a little bit less, or they're like, Destiny is just a fun game to me, but I don't invest a lot of time in it. I'll come in, do like the things that I need to do, and then I'll play other games, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a different type of people, right? It's a different type of player.
Yeah.
But you'll hear a lot from those like really those players that spend a lot of time in the game, that there's just like the story is a bit drip fed, which for some of them is frustrating, completely understandable.
The telenovela approach.
Yeah, the telenovela approach. And to a point, I get it, but at the same time, it's also kind of frustrating because it's drip fed. It's very small amounts every week. And then after that, you're kind of left to your own device.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I supposed to do? What is this thing that I'm supposed to be chasing? Because, the core playlist is a bit repetitive at this point. Everybody's done it over and over again. So we need something new. That's not the new thing that we're going to enjoy. Although I will say there is one thing that I really enjoyed this season, was that some of the modifiers for the strikes were really interesting.
Okay.
That was cool.
But which ones did you enjoy the most?
I enjoyed the ones where it was so I ran a lot of Navota in the beginning of the season when it was a Nightfall for the week. I ran like 5 ranks. I reset my rank 5 times that week with Navota, like just running it over and over again. And the one that I and my friend we really enjoyed was the crystal ones, I think. The one where it's either your abilities or your super regens very quickly. I think it's your ability. I think it's all of it. And there was another one. It was like arc and stasis stuff. And it was really fun to run.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. So that was a cool thing. But it's one thing in one playlist, right? So that's too small in my opinion. And then raids. I mean, they're there. They exist. Yeah. I've raided a lot, so I'm probably not the best example for this, but King's Fall is amazing. Love King's Fall. I can run it over and over again, although I still don't have the freaking exotic, but that's a whole other point.
I'm sorry, Seth. I'm sorry we couldn't do that for you last night.
It's okay. No, we tried. It's fine. I tried to like run all of my checkpoints every week at least, but that's my point of contention right now. But I still like King's Fall. I still like doing it. I still like running it. But other than King's Fall, I'm out DSC'd. I don't really want to run it anymore.
Okay.
Garden is still fun to me, but nobody wants to run Garden, so that's a whole other thing. This is going to be such a hot take for a lot of people, but I'm not the biggest fan of Last Wish. I'm so sorry. It's on a bad rate.
I'm in that same boat. I feel like it's too long.
It's not the length of it for me that's an issue. There's something about it that I'm like, it's a good raid. It's a really good raid. I just don't enjoy it. Other than like very specific groups. But if it becomes that, then it's kind of like, I don't know. It's okay. And I know some people are going to be like, oh my God, how dare you not like it? And it's not that I don't like it. It's just that I don't love it.
It's the one that I find that I like teaching the least.
There's a lot to it. It's one of the quote unquote most mechanic heavy raid that's left in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They definitely reached for something there. And I feel like they succeeded because it's captured the imagination of the people who absolutely love it.
Exactly. It's a really good raid. It's just
it is a 10-course meal of a raid, and I can do that every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know.
You don't want a 10-course meal every time, though, or else that kind of gets old. I feel like Vow is kind of its closest relative.
Yeah.
But it even then, like they managed to break it up so it's not as chunky of an experience.
True. But I'm tired of WoW.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I'm tired of it. I'm so sorry. It's one of these things where I'm like, I'm tired of these raids. VoG, same thing. Vault of Glass, I'm kind of tired of it. I'm tired of WoW. I'm tired of Last Wish. The only one that I'm not really tired of is Garden. Nobody wants to run Garden. They hate it because back in the day, it was very buggy.
Yeah.
It's less buggy now. It's actually pretty good now, but it's still like people have this bad memory of it, which is fully understandable, and they don't want to run it. Fair.
That's because they still build plates, and that's the whole thing.
I love building plates.
If you stop building plates, it makes it so much easier.
But it's all of these things, and then what do we have left? We have DSC again. I'm not interested in DSC. I don't mind it. I will run it, but it's like I don't see myself running DSC over and over again. King's Fall is still okay for me, but the more time I spend not getting the stupid exotic, the more I'm getting angry at it.
Yeah,
and I know it's stupid, so I'm not really angry at it, but I'm just like, come on, I just want it. Like, give it to me, please.
I think Patton was kind of in the same place because we've been running with him every week as well, and I think I got my third touch last night. And it was like the first of our runs. And he's like, something should happen about like that style of RNG. Like once you get it, I don't know. But
I mean, I mentioned it yesterday, right? It took me over 60 something Last Wish to get 1K. Back in the day, you didn't have bad luck protection, right? It took me like 60 something. But then once I got it, the next 3 or 4 raids that I run Last Wish, I got it back to back to back.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you didn't want to give it to me before, like instead of giving it to me 4 times in a row. So like, I still like King's Fall, but the raids that I really enjoyed are gone.
Yeah. Okay.
So that content is also not available. And I was talking. Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and so it's to the point where I feel like maybe last year we had this same conversation around the same time. And I saw this also on Twitter. It's not as popular as the like get rid of the seasonal model thing, right? It's the kind of like third season burnout for DLC.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like it is a constant it is a constant over just that kind of time span that we're in.
It's something I was talking with Nomad actually today. In his stream, one of the, in my opinion, and this is very much my opinion, one of the worst things that's ever happened to Destiny 2 was the DCV.
I saw his tweet on that earlier today too.
And the constant, I don't know if I saw his tweet, but I mentioned it when he was talking about different stuff in the stream. And to me, that is one of the things that it irrevocably changed Destiny 2. And not really in a good way.
Do you think it killed like some of the like gumption to go get stuff for you?
Some of it. There's a lot. I mean, it's a double face type of issue because with the DCV was the introduction of free to play. I tweeted about this recently, and I'm not going to go too much into details, but I was watching this video about this guy talking about Overwatch 2 and the changes from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, from the paid model to the free to play model, right? And I'll dig up that tweet if needed, but like people can see it. Like it's not that long ago. And the biggest thing that happens quite often with games that go from paid, like a paid DLC, a paid base game, paid DLC, so on and so forth, to free to play game, is that there's this kind of feeling of betrayal that you have, especially when content is being removed, because it's like, so for the game to become what it is right now, there's a lot of changes that need to happen. And some of that is good, but some of it sometimes is not good, because you're like, I paid for that previous content. You're removing it away from me in the hopes of bringing in new players that will spend money on your game. And logically, it makes sense to a certain extent, right? You do want new blood in the game. That does make sense. But it becomes to a point where it's like, oh, you want to introduce these new players to this game while also kind of sacrifice, like making a sacrifice out of the a veteran player's experience of the game. And also right now with Destiny, and we've talked about this before, the biggest issue for newcomers is that there's kind of no good introduction to the game.
Yeah.
Red War is gone. Curse of Osiris is gone. Warmind is gone. Forsaken is gone, even. They've
changed that experience a little bit, like, and it's still not the best onboarding, but I know, and we discussed this when you were on previously for like the Lightfall reveal. Like, they're bringing in they're bringing in that Guardian rank system. They're bringing in the commendation system, and I feel like that's supposed to be that is basically new Guardian 3.0. is like upgrading those core systems to kind of show a Guardian what their like overarching like trajectory should be from one thing to the next. Go ahead with your question.
Sure. Like that's not a wrong way of seeing it, and it's probably the way they're intending it to be. So this is great for newcomers, kind of, right? It's great for them to be like, okay, well, here's a bunch of things you can do, here's how you can achieve them, and here's like some of your peers that have maybe a bit more experience in the game, and here's where they stand within that system.
Yeah.
What does this bring
very helpful.
Yeah, for example, right? But what does this bring to the veteran players? What does it bring me as somebody who's been playing a lot of this game, as shown this week with my heat map of my play time? Just kind of touch some grass there, right? But it's one of these things where it's like, what does it bring me? Other than some title to chase, right? Cool.
Yeah.
But I'm tired of chasing titles. I didn't do my Dredgen this season, right?
Yeah.
I didn't do Conqueror. I didn't do any of these that I usually do because I was like, I don't have any interest in doing it. The GMs are the same GMs than like a few seasons ago. There's nothing really new, and it's not really fun to chase. Dredgen is always the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't want to spend my time doing that. Gambit to me doesn't feel nice. I had 14 hours in Gambit in one weekend this season, and that was it. I'm done. I'm over it. I didn't touch trials at all this season, and I usually do. Not at all this season. And it's kind of like, what does this bring to me as a veteran player? And hopefully it does bring something. I want it to bring me something to chase, bring me something to do. But other than a title, right now, I see nothing.
So it's like, when you play a game, what do you expect that kind of transaction to be?
So for me, what Destiny used to bring me was, of course, the social aspect. Destiny is one of the biggest thing. The biggest thing about Destiny to me is very much the social aspect. Right now, unfortunately, because people are burnt out on the game, way less people are playing, it becomes harder to have that social aspect. If I didn't have the social aspect, because sometimes people were just not around, and that's more than okay, then I could go back and replay the game and either get the rewarding satisfaction of replaying old mission, because sometimes it is nice, or having the like. Here's the thing: the story in Destiny, even in the older DLC, was really well done. Curse of Osiris aside, because it was just too short, but that's a whole other point. But the story was nice. Your
heat map for Curse of Osiris was
it's bad. You'll see, right? I
nothing.
There's like 2 weeks in the very beginning or something like that. But it's like that's when I stopped, and then I came back from Warmine. But anyway, Red War was a fantastic DLC. The story, I replayed it before it went away. Fantastic story, fantastic introduction to the game and the lore and the story of it. And then Warmine was really interesting also, and it was a good story. It wasn't as like telenovela type of thing, but it was still really well done. Forsaken, same thing. Forsaken was quote unquote episodic in the sense that you had to go for each Baron, and so that one after the other. So that was a little bit episodic. It was kind of an introduction to that. But my time was spent like discovering the lore and the story behind Destiny 2, or it was spent chasing weapons or chasing armor, chasing these things, right? Chasing that type of stuff. And back in the day, to me at least, it felt like the game was rewarding my time spent.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, I don't really feel like the game is rewarding my time spent. That's a big issue.
Yeah. I'm just kind of like, I'm looking at your like, I'm looking at your heat map. Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
And kind of like trying to analyze it on the fly. Because it's, I mean, looking at it, you're spending about half as much time as you did like this season as you did in Splicer, right?
I loved Splicer.
Yeah. And like Splicer, it felt like there was something to really go for. Splicer didn't feel like it was super grindy either.
Yeah, and it was rewarding.
This season definitely feels it's felt grindy in a lot of ways, and
not in a good way. Not in a good way, because I'll throw this right. Season of Opulence was grindy because you were chasing for those roles, right, with Menagerie and everything. And like, how many Menagerie have I done? Absolutely insane. But it was enjoyable, first and foremost. And second of all, you felt like you had some control over your weapon rolls, right? You had some control over your RNG, quote unquote. So like you look at my heat map, it's one of my most played, let's call it quote unquote regular season. It was 2 weeks longer than it was supposed to, something like that. Because Shadowkeep was pushed back by 2 weeks. So yeah, like 2 weeks more than supposed to. But when you look at it, it's the one that has the most colors. So I played the heck out of it because I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun to me. And Splicer was also rewarding to me. Here's a really cool thing that I really miss about Splicer. Seasonal event override was an easy farm or an easy grind because you could play it and it wasn't complicated. It was not bad. Like, there was nothing really about the event that was really bad or really frustrating. And it was something that you'd go in with some friends. You would just be talking and enjoying, like spending time together. And while in the background, you would be doing that. And then the sponge missions would give you 3
high stat armor.
Yeah, either like so 3 times a week on every character, you'd have either like a high stat armor, or you would get a multiple perk weapon. Right? So that felt rewarding because and when you had all of them unlocked, you could cheese it and have like the quickest one, which would take you like not even 5 minutes to complete. It felt rewarding. But then after that, Season of the Lost was a really long season. That was another one.
Yeah. Well, that one got broken up though.
Yeah, exactly. The 30th anniversary was a really good thing. That's a really good thing that Banshee did. I think that without that, it would have been the end of it would not have been as full for me, definitely. But it's all of these things where I think Splicer, they kind of found a good equilibrium between story, between seasonal event, between like all of that. But then that kind of was removed, or they kind of lost it somehow. Because another thing that Bungie, I think, is struggling right now is that every season introduces new currency, but all of these currencies are capped.
Yeah.
And
that's meant to like make you play more, make you invest in the their vendor, and then keep you on the
true.
loop overall, rather than just
But
hoarding massive amounts.
but I will argue that you'll keep me on the loop more if your activity is interesting and rewarding than by capping my currency. Because in Arrivals, when they introduced the Umbros and everything, I remember towards the end of the season, I had something like 4,000, 5,000 something altered elements.
Yeah.
Right? And then I started to like get Umbros and just decode them just to try to get some god rolls. But I played the heck out of that season because there were so many things to do, first and foremost, and also because I enjoyed it. I know people didn't like the public event, but I did.
Yeah, that one kind of it was balls at uprights kind of thing. What Aura would have called balls at uprights. It was fine. It just was.
I mean, some people didn't like it, and that's okay. Like most of the public events, I actually enjoyed, but I know some people don't. Or like the seasonal things, I enjoyed them. But I do truly believe right now that it's a question of the game doesn't feel rewarding for the time you spent in it. And this season, especially, I've heard multiple people complain about red borders being so difficult to get. To the point where Bungie had to be like, okay, well, we'll give you like a free one every week.
I will say that one feels more like toward the beginning of the season. Yes, absolutely. I feel like the red borders for this seasonal, the seasonal weapons this time around, absolutely. I feel like if they were trying to experiment with how far they could push the grind, that the first few weeks probably were the breaking point because they had such backlash to it. This time around, like post them patching that, I do feel like it is better. I actually have all of the weapons for this season, mainly by picking them up at the vendors and stuff. And like at this point in time, the things that I'm missing, I have one more scout rifle that I need to get from the Castellum, and I have the glaive left. I know, but that was also me using my time to be like, okay, I'm gonna play Wellspring, a Dares, and another thing. For those at home, take a drink. In order to like break up that grind without it feeling like I had to get them all in like a week.
But I will say this: Risen, Umbral Energy, you can get from strikes and other various activities.
Absolutely, and that's another thing
you cannot.
Right,
which makes no sense.
Right,
especially since the season is over. Why would I go back to? And that's sucky. Coming from me, you know this. Coming from me saying, why should I go back to the Castellum? Why why do I need to? And I used to love the Castellum because I used to love those raids. And I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't want to go on a Castellum because I had to grind so much to get the craftable weapons. And like, I love the fact that we can craft weapons, but I feel like a lot of the requirements for them are too steep, especially since, like, as we said, red borders don't really drop that much.
Right. Yeah, I think that like there could definitely be some adjustments made there. If we can like the seasonal model being what it is, and like overall enjoyment of it, you know, I there are a lot of people who don't enjoy it. I kind of like it from my aspect as a content creator, because it's like, okay, for the first 8 weeks I know exactly what I'm doing, and then I can kind of and then if I want to focus some stuff, I can build stuff around that, or it, like right now what I'm doing is taking time away from it so I don't burn myself before the next season.
That's not a bad thing. That's definitely not a bad thing. I just think that the seasonal model works when your base game and the core of your game is healthy.
And right now it's we're relitigating things that have been on Twitter with it. But yeah, the core playlist definitely needs some love. I would hope that that would come with like Lightfall, but that's pure speculation. I don't know.
But is that too late? Also,
I don't know.
Right?
It depends on who you are. I think it depends
Definitely,
on who you
100%.
are, and I think it depends on what it depends on what you view your investment in the game is. I think is part of that, right? Because it's like, whereas you and I are veterans of the game, right? And our investment isn't so much like I don't play the core playlists right now at all. I do not go in them. I'm basically just going to do the activities where I know that I have a targeted bit of loot and then bouncing out after 1 or 2 runs. And then mainly because I don't see the
value of it, probably.
I don't see the value of the core playlists at where I am as a player outside of Pinnacle Grind. And then if I want to, like before Lightfall, I'm probably going to do a bounty grind. Right before Lightfall, the last month of that season, whatever season 19 is going to be, that last month, I'm going to bounty grind my ass off and store enough bounties to push that season artifact up so I can be prepared for whatever content comes with Lightfall, like the raid, like other stuff. But that's primarily where I'm looking. If you're wanting to spend all your time in Destiny and the core playlists aren't your bag, then yeah, I think you're going to have a bad time, right?
Yeah. That's the thing.
Like
that's the issue. Or like try to introduce somebody new to this game.
See, right? Like I don't know. This is something that I'm noticing with God of War, right? So God of War 2018 was really good. I really enjoyed it. This new iteration, I'm finding myself having to get over a certain hump with it. And that hump is what I loved about 2018 is that it feels like God of War 2018, but there's not enough. I don't see at face value the jump from 2018 to 2020. I don't see that update outside of like
graphics, story.
Well, I mean, like graphically, it looks beautiful. You can tell that it is a technical achievement. It is UI and like field of view is bothering me a little bit. And like just it kind of feeling clunky. Now I'm also playing at like a higher difficulty. I'm playing at no mercy, so it takes what ostensibly used to be a button masher and turns it into a Soulsborne game. But you know what I mean? Like it's coming from my point is I'm a player who is coming new to this sequel after playing the original, but seeing kind of the design philosophies and maybe a little bit, I don't know if tech debt is the correct phrase for it, but seeing some of those finickier things that I'm not entirely sure I liked about 2018, seeing those pop up again in 2022 and being like, well, I'm not seeing any growth in it. So
do you think that could be because it's also on PS4 and not just a PS5 quote unquote exclusive?
I don't know. I really don't know. Like I don't know if that has to have hindered some of the development process, right?
Probably. Like, yeah, I don't know enough about it, but it would make sense in some ways, definitely.
Like I hear the PS4 runs like a jet engine when you're trying to play the PS4 version. But there's it for me. I start bouncing off of once I'm in the game and having a good time. I'm having fun, but I start Initially, I was bouncing off of those, like maybe some design influences from things that were a previous generation. And so as somebody who's not coming in as a new player, I don't know if a new player comes in and is like, ugh, this feels like 7 years ago. You know what I mean? Or if they have no expectation for how a Destiny game should like feel, and if the core playlists actually do something for them. Maybe I should invite somebody who's brand new to the game onto the show.
See, your points are good, and I understand what you're saying. I don't think that would be the issue with a new player.
Okay.
I don't think they would be like, oh, does the game feel good or does it feel old, quote unquote? Or any of these type of like, is it clunky or something? I don't think so. I mean, I've been playing it for a while and we understand kind of most of the ins and outs and like the clunkiness, and we can avoid it or work around it as, you know, players that have played so much. I don't think there's that many in Destiny. I mean, right now there's some lag, definitely. Like we can all feel it. The tower is still having issues. I feel a lot of lag. I have contacting Destiny 2 servers every day that I log into the game as I log into the game. So there's some issues there, definitely. I think that my biggest thing for newcomers is like, how do you introduce them to the story?
Yeah.
Like, how do you catch them up to where we are right now? What's available in the game? Because whenever I go into somebody's chat, either I'm modding or I'm just like talking to the streamer because they're a friend of mine or so on and so forth. And then there's a newcomer that comes in and like, hey, I just started Destiny. I'm trying to catch up. I'm not fully like understanding everything. I'm like, do you want a story, or like, is it more mechanics that you're looking for? And whenever they tell me like, oh, like the story seems interesting, I can't figure it out, which is fair. I link them to a full YouTube series of like all the cutscenes in Destiny. And I'm like, well, have fun with this. It's like, I don't know, 20 something hours of just cutscenes. But I shouldn't have to do that. Right? Like it feels weird to me to be like, Destiny is a great game. It is. It has like a lot of really cool story and a lot of lore and a lot of like events that happen in it. But I have to send you to a YouTube video or a YouTube playlist for you to know all about it. And it's so just weird to me. It's not even like, oh, there was story in D1 that ties into D2. Like, as somebody that hasn't played D1 and as somebody that probably will never play D1 because you play on console, I don't know about it, and people will send me videos. I'm like, oh, cool, that makes sense to me because it's a different game, right? But we're talking about the same game, and I have to direct people to a third-party thing, and it's not a tool to help them in-game. It's a third-party thing to make them understand what's happening currently.
Right. Yeah.
And that's weird.
Yeah.
Because the mechanics of the game are good. Like, the mechanics are good still. I truly believe so. And like, the game runs really well overall. I mean, again, there's still issues here and there, but it's still a really good game. And again, we've talked about this before. To me, there's no games like Destiny with the aesthetics, the gunplay, the feel, the environments, the story, all of that. Like, the full of like the whole of Destiny is just amazing. But there's missing parts now that weren't there before, and it's kind of like how I'm trying to bring in new people, like friends of mine, and tell them this is a great game, but you have to go watch like a video to understand what's happening.
Yeah, like if they're wanting for me, when somebody comes in and he's like, hey, like I think mechanically first. Saint Simba on Twitter the other day was talking about how he'd spent so much time away from Destiny, and he's just coming back in and he feels overwhelmed and not really sure like where he should dive in. And I was like, right now, just kind of play what you want. And I was like, I said, you're in the back half of the season. You can kind of just don't go whole hog and eat all of the ice cream. Like, take in some of the
you're
ice
gonna
cream.
get a brain freeze. Yeah.
Exactly. Take in a little bit of the ice cream. Like there's a lot of ice cream here. There's a lot of different flavors. Maybe you'll like one better than the other. But the next season is coming December 6th. If you're looking, like, that'll be a good jumping on point if you're wanting to like dive deep in. And then here's this Fallout video for how to gain pinnacle. Like, you know.
I know.
Yeah. So I think it just depends on like where you're coming in and how you're coming into it. So,
I mean,
and there's always that bike video that's like 4 or 5 hours long about the history of Destiny.
Also
2.
very true. But it still remains the issue of the cool thing about the buy video is that there's more than just the cutscenes. Like he does tie in other pieces of lore and other pieces of history. Yeah, exactly. And I mean that's a great video and everything. Yeah. Like it's his is interesting, and to me it's more like here's more if you want more.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whereas when I when I link people to the cutscenes, it's more like here's what was in the game. But it's not in the game anymore. But your point is right, because I do the same thing. When people come in and it's more like halfway of the season, or past halfway the season, I'm like, well, you can try to catch up for the season. That's not a bad thing. And it's also kind of interesting because you'll understand a little bit more and you can get also the rewards of the season. So the weapons, the armor, whatever it is. But I'm always like, you don't really have to go all in. Like you said, it's more like, do what seems interesting to you and get like come back into it, right? Like get back into the whole like rhythm of it, the feels of things and everything. Compared to like if they're starting a season or starting a DLC and everybody's starting at the same time, then like everybody more has a tendency to just be like, let's go all in and just jumping in.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend going solo flawless on a dungeon your first weekend, unless you're into that kind of thing. If you're into that kind of challenge, absolutely. But if you don't know what you're getting into, then I wouldn't like.
Yeah, some people like that though. They're like, "Hey, I'm going in blind, and I'm going to see what's up with that," and that's okay. Like that's definitely not my style. But a lot of people I know really enjoy that, and in that case, go for it. Like, jump in, have fun. It's also depending on what people like to do. But right now, I would recommend PvP to PvP players. I also, like. Go ahead. I could say, like, oh, Gambit. If you like Gambit, sure, but like whatever strikes are strikes. If you've played them, you've already played them. Like you already know them, most of them at least.
Yeah.
So
Iron Banner eruptions this week. That's a bright spot this season.
That's no, definitely. But Iron Banner is just twice a season now compared to at least 3.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm just like, for me, the sweet spot for Iron Banner has always been 3 weeks in a season. So that's something that I feel. I think we feel it a lot more now, especially since Iron Banner tends to be in the beginning of the season and then at the end of the season, and in the middle of it, it's kind of like,
I'm hoping they bring it back like just one extra week.
Yeah, three times a season, like 1 month, quote unquote. To me, was the perfect balance for Iron Banner. It was perfect back then.
I don't know. I don't know necessarily if you need to remove the trials pool during Iron Banner.
That's a whole other can of worms right there.
We don't need to get into it. We're already running longer than I thought.
I mean, we have a lot to talk about. I mean, like, I don't know if we do. I understand why they're doing it. It's kind of like, damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody's going to be unhappy either way.
Maybe put it a freelance weekend? Maybe. You have Iron Banner and then you put a freelance weekend on trials.
That's awesome. That's kind of cool. I like that. I think it
wouldn't be a bad idea. We'll see. Anyway, just throwing that idea out there.
Yeah. Anyways, send the check to Seth. She lives in Canada, so the taxes are a little different.
If only.
Well, on that note, so people find you on the internet.
You can find me on Twitter, as I said, same name as Eseipha, and I usually do TWAP readings with Pidge on Thursdays. So if you want to come and enjoy that while Pidge just lays back and just enjoys. Other than that, Twitter. Twitter is the best way to contact me or to talk to me. Other than that, I'm kind of a recluse. I'm a grandma, and I will stay a grandma.
My name's Danfinity. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Danfinity, where the eyes are L's. You can catch me 3 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/Danfinity, helping Guardians through Pinnacle and Endgame PvE activities, or playing God of War. If you'd like to support the show, remember to rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Anything you say helps us in the algorithms. And finally, this show is listener supported. So if you'd like to give $3 a month to keep the lights on, head on over to coffee.com/Danfinity. That is ko-fi.com/Danfinity. All links are in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you find what you're grinding for.